In the earliest and most fragile days of Islam, the Muslim community in Mecca was facing one of its darkest hours. The Prophet Muhammad had begun to openly preach the message of monotheism, that there is only one God, and that all people are equal in his eyes. But this message directly threatened the power and tradition of the Quraysh leaders, and they responded with brutal force. The Muslims were mocked, beaten, imprisoned, and even killed simply for believing in Allah. Under this unbearable pressure, the Prophet made a decision that would forever shape the story of Islam. He instructed a small group of his companions to migrate to a distant land, Abyssinia, across the Red Sea, in East Africa. Why Abyssinia? Because, as the Prophet said, there is a king there under whom no one is wronged. That king was Ashama ibn Abjar, known in Islamic history as King Najashi, the ruler of the Christian kingdom of Oxim. Though Najashi was not a Muslim at the time, he was known for his justice, humility, and God consciousness, qualities that aligned closely with Islamic values. When the Muslim refugees arrived on his shores, they were tired, afraid, and completely at his mercy. But instead of treating them as unwanted foreigners or political threats, King Najashi welcomed them and granted them sanctuary. However, the Quraysh were not going to let the Muslims go that easily. They sent two of their most persuasive envoys, laden with lavish gifts, to demand that Najashi return the Muslims to Mecca. The strategy was simple: flatter the king, then pressure him. But Najashi, being the just man he was, refused to act without hearing both sides of the story. He called for the Muslims to appear before him and defend themselves. What followed was one of the most beautiful moments in Islamic history. Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet's cousin, stepped forward and delivered a heartfelt speech. He described the ignorance and injustice of pre-Islamic Arabia, the revolutionary teachings of the Prophet, and how Islam had taught them to speak the truth, care for the poor, honor their family, and worship only God. Then, to show the depth of their faith and its connection with Christianity, Ja'far recited verses from Surah Maryam, describing the purity of Mary, and the miraculous birth of Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him. As Najashi listened, tears streamed down his face. He turned to his bishops, who were also moved to tears, and declared, "What you have recited and what Jesus brought come from the same source, the same lamp." With that, he turned to the Qurayshi envoys and said, "No, by God, I will never hand them over to you." Not only did he reject their gifts and pressure, but he gave the Muslims permanent protection in his land, a land where they could live, worship, and thrive in peace. This single act of compassion and justice ensured the survival of Islam during a time when its future was uncertain. King Najashi's support gave the Muslims breathing room until they could eventually migrate to Medina and build the first Islamic state. His actions earned the deep love and respect of the Prophet, who would later receive news of Najashi's death and lead a funeral prayer in absentia, Salat al-Janaza al-Ghaib, an incredibly rare honor that shows how much Najashi meant to the Muslim community. According to several accounts, Najashi even secretly embraced Islam, keeping his faith private to maintain stability in his kingdom. While some details remain debated by scholars, what's universally accepted is that his justice, character, and courage in the face of political pressure earned him a place in Islamic history, not as a ruler of a Muslim nation, but as a protector of Muslims and of the Islamic message when it mattered the most.